But see, it doesn't do any of the video.
Go back there. Oh yeah, those are both on.
I don't
The
understand.
meeting is being streamed. Maybe that's fine. Maybe we don't need.
Well, it's being streamed through Meets.
To what?
Copy streaming link. Let's see what this says. I mean, we could blast out this.
This is live. You're talking. I can see you.
On YouTube?
Yeah, right there. This is
Oh, that's me.
so,
What? Okay.
it was working the first time.
It's just not showing the video.
That's right.
Okay. Maybe.
Can I ask you something? All right, it's working. It's good. I think it's okay to have it the other way, right? Because we already have that.
Well, this is just so I can see if anything gets messed up.
Oh, got it. It's 8:30 tomorrow. Just for this. All right. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Peirce Local School Council regular meeting. This is our last meeting of the calendar year under regular meetings. Before we get started, I'd like to go over our norms. So throughout the meeting, we'll engage to be an active, engaged, contributing participant by sharing our perspective and listening to others. We'll be flexible and respectful of others' time and decisions. We'll be open to other people's truths and perspectives. Be reminded of differences in cultural and social backgrounds. We'll be transparent about concerns, challenges, and misunderstandings. Be reflective, collaborative, and supportive. We'll always take the work back to student achievement. What can we do to make things better for our students, both academically and social-emotionally? We'll respect student, staff, and LSC member confidentiality unless there's a threat to safety. A meeting should be paused if LSC members or meeting participants experience harm due to their identity, including but not limited to gender, sexual orientation, race, etc. The harm should be named. We'll understand that not everything has a right now solution and trust that the process is ongoing. With that, I would like to go ahead and do a roll call. Matthew Kwame, parent rep.
Lori Zamy, principal.
Lake Jane, community rep.
Lindsay Moon, parent rep.
Adrian Kabashi, student representative.
Kathleen Hayes, parent representative.
Keith Bjorklund, parent rep.
Nicole Granicki, parent rep.
Rocky Dodia, parent rep. Who's spelling the last name?
KA. BA.
BA? That's it?
No, SHI.
SH. Got it.
Byron informed me that he was unable to attend today's meeting. Ms. Chalico is going to join a little bit later because she runs Girls on the Run.
She runs early.
Yeah, and Adolfo is out. Figure this out. Very good. First item on the agenda is the approval of the order of the agenda.
Second. Oh, wait.
I'll make a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Excellent. Thank you. The next item is, I'm sorry, all in favor? Very good. All approved. Thank you. All right. So now we're jumping straight into items needing approval of the council. The first one, this is our ongoing item, allow LSC members to join the meeting remotely. Nobody has asked for that feature, but just in case, all in favor? Okay, approved. Thank you very much. Next item is approval of the minutes from the April 11th regular meeting agenda, regular meeting minutes. Did I say that? Wrong? Minutes. Thank you again for taking notes.
Thank you, Rocky, for doing that every other meeting.
All right. So I got to make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 11th regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Did I do that again? All in favor? Thank you. Next item, minutes from the April 25th special meeting on school budget. And thank you, Rocky, again for sharing that.
Sorry, it was late, guys.
Second check?
All in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. The next one is approval of Friends of Peirce fundraiser for Fiesta de Arte. So April and Chad sent us the documentation for, or the fundraiser approval. So there are two sets of documents, right? So two sets of approvals for two different meetings. So this is the first one. It's for the fundraiser that will occur during Fiesta de Arte on May 29th, 2024. Any sharing details?
Is the proposed use of the funds is that all profit going to FOP will be used to support school art department in Fiesta de Arte for 2025.
Is there a particular component of Fiesta?
They have like vendor booths. There might be like a few things that are for sale during the event. It says donations, so people can make donations. There's some art cards, table rental, food. It's a free event. It's not a ticketed event, and like most things are free, but there are like donation or per paid components of it.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the fundraiser during Fiesta de Arte on May 29th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. The next one, also related to Fiesta de Arte, is approval of the leasing agreement because the event will be happening on school grounds. Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Did somebody second it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to make a motion to approve the leasing agreement for Fiesta de Arte on May 29, 2024.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Next item, approval of the fundraiser and gala for Peirce on May 31st. So this one is going to happen at another location, but, and thanks to Kathleen, so because it's a fundraiser on behalf of the school that will profit the school, which is stated in the paperwork, we have to have the approval or the approval from the LSC has to be provided.
So funds raised for this initiative will be targeted to be dispersed to support future school needs. The revenue potential of the auction is unknown as we have not held an event like this since before the pandemic. After expenses, all revenues will be budgeted back to the school based on needs communicated.
I don't think there's anything we can do. Like, silent
Silent
auction,
auction.
done.
There's no projected revenue even?
They're
Or aim?
anticipating $25,000, 5,000, they're anticipating $5,000 in revenue.
Profit. All right. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the fundraiser they have for Peirce. It's called Panthers Ball, I think, on May 31st.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. And then the last item here is a motion to approve a leasing agreement for adult dance classes.
Just like parent dance classes.
Parent,
like,
I'm sorry.
and it's actually more like parent community, like dance classes. It's similar to the parent basketball league, where they're trying to see, there's a parent who's interested in getting something going similar to what's happening for basketball.
Okay.
On a weekly basis, and so there's 3 proposed meeting dates that will be communicated if it's approved, and then see if that can carry on into next school year.
So it wouldn't interfere with the basketball?
No.
Oh, okay.
So the parent basketball league happens fairly soon. Who organizes it?
One of our parents, in collaboration with Friends of Peirce. Fred Sasaki has been the person that's taken over on that.
I've been looking for a gym in Anderson. I did not know there was one right here.
Most
that was
Friday nights,
available.
6 o'clock, there you go.
Yeah. So
Is this going back to? Yeah, I did not know
Do
that.
you get this morning?
See, the things you learn.
No. Oh, maybe that's.
yeah, it's a.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was told that I could come. I mean, that's the skill level.
I was about to comment on that.
Yeah, I don't know, like, if you're aspiring to like real basketball.
Yeah, so it's
but-
medium speed. Medium level.
I was JV level. It was communicated to me. Oh, JV level. No, I would. Nobody would want me there. I have no hand-eye coordination.
And I swear, everybody that goes comes away with injuries. And they're like sweaty, and it's like an intense league.
First time, I'll just sit in the
Yeah,
audience and
just watch it. Give it. It was like a 15-minute
This is good
handicap.
to know. Honestly, I talked to so many friends about it. I wish we could find a good gym.
Sun has an open gym too.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Thanks for that.
Did you motion on that, Matthew?
Not yet.
Okay.
So I'd like to make and this is a constant reminder of the need for appropriate wording.
That was my
So
fault,
approving
'cause I
of leasing agreement for parent dance classes. So I'd like to make a motion to approve, that's all. To approve the leasing agreement for parent dance classes. Parent dance classes.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, very good. Excellent. So next we have student rep. I'm gonna have you. Oh, where did you go? Oh, there he is. I was looking between Kathleen and Keith for whatever reason. And I'm like, wait a minute, he was right here. Where did you go? You're more than happy to. Anything that you want to share?
I don't have much to report because I haven't really gone to I haven't tried to get to the students yet since I technically do start being student representative start of July, sorry. But yeah, I don't really have much to report.
That's fine. Well, thank you again for joining.
I did commend Adrian for getting in front of the 8 ball and I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
it's
it's a
really
second meeting.
proactive of you to just get the lay of the
Seriously.
land and see how meetings go, so that's
You're
great work.
an upcoming rising 8th grader?
7th.
7th grade, okay. Is it okay to get his email address? Just for future
I
communication?
don't think
So
so.
go for
It wouldn't go through the student. Outside won't go to student.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we communicate with?
So what I've done is forward things to our students.
Okay, so anytime we want to communicate with Adrian, email, video, and
Yes.
Let me put that in the notes.
Do you maybe want to comment on, what you may want to focus on as you're arriving in the seventh grade, some things that you're seeing? Maybe next time, but I'm just curious in terms of what's going on currently within your grade, things that, you're thinking about.
I mean, the only major thing that I've noticed is a few broken utilities in the bathroom. But yeah, that's the only like thing most that sorry, that's the only thing that I have noticed. Because I haven't really been looking for anything. But yeah, that's the only thing I've noticed.
This is just an idea that we do not need to discuss right now, but I'm wondering, like, in order to get some more input from students, if you think like putting a QR code with like a flyer up or some way for students to communicate with you what they're thinking and feeling and concerned about, I don't know, something to think about over the summer.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can think it over. Like not exact, maybe not QR code. I could do that. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but yeah.
The question for those who've been here is, does the school have a news channel? I remember when I went to public school in Michigan, we had like a student-run news channel where
There's no,
they
we
had 10
don't,
minutes of news to the student.
we don't have that, but we have our student voice committee,
Okay.
that Adrian would be a part of.
Okay.
We have a vision for connecting LSC student rep
Yeah.
with student council reps,
Okay.
with affinity space reps,
Okay.
together in formal spaces to discuss like action planning and then like ways for Adrian, like to support Adrian in collecting feedback from the students at the school.
Student voice, and what was the other one?
We wanna, so through the student voice committee, we wanna have the LSC student representatives from student council groups and representatives from affinity spaces to come together in collaboration with the school staff that are also leading in those spaces, to look at like what our action plan is, what are things that are not on our radar that we need to think about, and look for ways that students are then, like how can we support students with getting that information, because it's overwhelming often for a 12-year-old to like have to take that on their own, and so we do have to like nurture and support that.
Good. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, principal report.
So I'm gonna just talk through a few points with the theme of student voice. There have been a student voice at the classroom and school-wide decision level, school-wide decision-making level are part of our school improvement plan. So I just wanted to share a couple of things that we've done over the last month. One of them is that we've asked teachers to ask their students if they can identify a couple of friends that they would like to have in class with them for the following year. We can't guarantee that they'll be with all of the friends, but to try and make sure that every kid has at least one friend identified in the next year's class. I've also sought feedback from students on how their school day looks through their like daily schedule, and have asked classrooms to give a recommendation, like one per classroom, like if they could make changes to it, what would they like to see, given the district guidelines. So those guidelines were shared with what we have to do. And so we can't guarantee that all of that will be able to be done, but it'll help us as we're finalizing school schedules to see, where might there be places that we can have some flexibility. Paul Papadopoulos, who's a newer SICA to the school, has also been supporting our library and has sent out a survey to students to see what books they would like to see available in the library that aren't available. And so he's currently working on putting together an order that we would have in place for next year. And then Mr. Lerner had sought feedback from newly arrived students and how they're feeling supported in the school, along with a request for feedback from students on the school year 25 budget. The ILT has begun meeting to discuss next year's professional development plan and looking at the CIWP priority areas and the school year 25 action plan and starting to map out what that looks like. Next year will be a heavy emphasis on supporting English language learners. And so Mr. Lerner is working on creating a draft to then get feedback from teachers on how we can further enhance our professional development for teachers on supporting English language learners. In alignment with that, which is also related to our school improvement plan, is that there have been a curriculum order that's being placed for bilingual and ESL students that include science and social studies books in Spanish that align with the PYP units, new ESL workbooks that are specifically designed to support newcomers, some supplementary game activities, along with blue and green expo markers for all classrooms to promote the use of district-wide color coding in a bilingual classroom. So it's good to have like a two-way color coding system to identify what is written in English, what's written in Spanish. The Go CPS acceptances went out, and so we're currently monitoring current school enrollment, number of transfers out, along with how many students we need to take through the Go CPS process. Yep.
On the English language learners feedback, maybe a comment and a question. So how is that feedback being arrived at? Because in terms of English language learners, the home condition has a lot of context with regard to how they may be feeling in the school. So if there's a way we can capture both what may be happening at home, particularly if the parents are also English language learners, the student themselves may not be able to fully express the context of their needs. We just wanted to share that. If there's a way we
about the Josh Lerner feedback?
With the focus.
Are we just asking the student how they're feeling? And just want to make sure that we capture also what may be happening on the home front, particularly if there's a way to capture that. Because from my experience, right, the home front has a lot to do with how the student is feeling at school, particularly new school, language learning. So if there's a way we can capture both sides.
Thank you. During the budget meeting, I had shared that we had cuts to our special ed department. We received 2 additional SECA positions that were reinstated. They have not given us back yet the additional teacher, and then I think there were 2 additional SECAs. And so because there's continuing to be fluctuations in scheduling right now, I won't be able to really put in an appeal until once the school year ends. When I did the initial schedules, we didn't need the additional teacher, but I know that once IEPs are finalized between now and June 7th, I'm pretty confident that we will. So, but I can't appeal until the schedules will warrant that appeal. So I'll keep the LSC updated along with the school staff on where we're at for that. End of the year, STAR testing for kindergarten through 8th grade is generally completed. We're just finishing up makeup testing, and once everything is done, we'll be able to look at end of the year data compared to our CIWP goals. And then the specials team organized the spring showcase, which took place yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Summer programming is starting to get going. So we sent out an invite to the school community. Many families have said yes. I think we've got about 150 in the kindergarten through 8th grade program, and that's separate from the preview to pre-K and kickoff to kindergarten, who have said that they are interested. And so Lynn is working on finalizing that coordination. The 5th grade students shared their learning in the exhibition that took place beginning of May. And our 8th grade students were able to travel to New York City and successfully get. May 29th is our fiesta, which we just talked about, which will focus on like arts and music. I am working with Sun High School in an attempt to hire high school students to support after-school programs and summer programs to try and create like more paid opportunities for high school students to work with us through the out-of-school time program. And then, a huge thank you to the Peirce families who really did a great job in celebrating our teachers through Teacher Appreciation. The Bilingual Advisory Council led a very successful Dia del Nino with close to 30 volunteers that were here to support students to enjoy the Day of the Child. And then Annie Park, one of our school counselors, coordinated free eye exams that resulted in several students receiving free eyeglasses. And then the initial plan for an after-school musical was shifted so that we had a school-wide concert that honored Jaden Perkins. That took place between April 18th and April 20th. And we are currently hiring for next school year and have had, I think it's like at this point, 21 interviews. We've got 3 more set up next week. We've been able to finalize a decision on a 6th grade language arts candidate. We've identified a candidate for the 4th grade Spanish position, and we still have to fill the 3rd grade bilingual, 1st grade ESL or bilingual, and then 8th grade math. We've got a temporary position that we need to fill for 3rd grade, Ms. Munoz' leave, and the temporary position for security. And then thank you to our LSC members who today is their last formal meeting. Keith, Lindsay, Kathleen, Byron, Anna, and Laura. That's it.
I have a question. And pardon me if I didn't absorb this at our budget meeting, but when you're talking about the SECA positions being reinstated, I recall that there was at least one bilingual assistant position that we would lose in the budget that you proposed, and thinking about that, how that relates to, I forget which pillar of the CIWP, pillar 2 maybe, but is there any way to retain that position or get it back? Or?
Only if we have money to do that. So that means that we would have to be allocated additional dollars.
And tell me more about that.
By the district. Based on we didn't have barely enough money to even.
Yeah.
Like we're using internal accounts to pay for like a lot of things for next school year. And then when we had done the survey, we would have 0 bilingual school assistants. And so as a council, we agreed to vote on having 1 bilingual school assistant. So that was sort of the happy medium.
It was 2 that were slated to leave.
Yes. Yes. And so it was through the way that we surveyed the school community, there was a desire to still keep some component of that work happening at Peirce. And so it was that it just was, we lost one of the 2.
Okay. Thank you for the question.
But we would need additional revenue from the district.
And you said, I think it was a May 15th date to hear about special ed.
Yes, and so that I got, yesterday or the day before, I found out that we received the 2 seats.
Those are the ones. Got it.
And then the appeal window is, I believe, opening on Monday. But I won't be able to submit an appeal until our schedules are, our IEPs are done.
Sorry, one other thing, I'm just processing what we just talked about. You said unless the district provides more funds, there's no typical scenario where that would happen, right? It would be only if they decided, we just want to,
if the state, said, here's CPS, here's more money, then that would be one way. Another way would be if the district, based on our IEPs, does give us money back towards a case manager, because right now we're fully funding a 2nd case manager. But if we get a half-time case manager, that would free up additional dollars that could go towards a bilingual school assistant. And then the other is to fundraise for positions, which has been something that we've chosen not to do in the past. Or FOP, I should say, is chosen not to fund positions.
Question on talent. How does the recruitment work exactly? As you weigh a position available? Yeah, how does that work to posting, to getting the candidates, interviewing, selection?
There's different ways. One is through the district's hiring system. So we post a position through what's called Taleo. People that are looking to work in CPS can see all postings and choose where they want to apply. The district has candidates that they identify in advance for high needs positions, and they'll send school administrators a resume book that explicitly has, here are candidates that have cleared the early offer process for these high need positions, and we're able to scan those. We also have organizations where I will reach out to from like Golden Apple, Northwestern universities, and I'll ask them, can they send me resumes of their graduates? And then some of it is also word of mouth from like our staff or families sharing to the wider community. And so then resumes come in and we screen them, and then we have interview panels of administrators, staff members, parents, that then interview.
LSC is not involved in.
But members of the LSC have signed up to participate in interviews. So Matthew and Rocky did a ton last year.
That's great.
And is there a training that is provided to interview?
No, we don't have an internal training, but we have a structure. So we have like prescribed questions, and then in the interview, everybody is assigned specific questions to ask, and then there's a rating form that everybody completes afterwards.
I have a piggyback question, but I want to just defer to anybody else who has other questions. I have a question sort of about talent, but.
I have a few questions. Go ahead.
Because we had a public participant write in about, how shall I phrase it? The rash of teachers leaving Peirce. I just wondered, I remember last year you gave us the rundown for why people were leaving. Can you share that information now? Some of the positions are temporary.
We actually had a teacher resign and then say they're no longer relocating. We had a conversation yesterday, so they're gonna stay.
Okay.
But they're not included on this. So they were gonna be relocating out of state, and then that's since changed. We had a new sixth grade language arts teacher who was on a leave of absence and then chose that teaching was not the right fit for her. So she recently resigned from the district. Our fourth through eighth grade Spanish teacher had to move back to Spain. Because they had just personal matters that they could not stay in the US any longer. Then our third grade bilingual teacher had been on a leave of absence all year and then resigned. And then we had a staff member who we were able to put in it, but the person that's in there right now is moving to Australia. We have Miss Albert who will be retiring, and Miss Choliko is actually going to move to second grade, which then creates a first grade vacancy as a result of the retiree, essentially. We have our eighth grade math teacher who's currently temporarily not at Peirce per the district, that we have to hire a temporary person for that one. We have a teacher on maternity leave. Kristen will be having a baby in July, and then Adolfo's been on medical person leave as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was excited to see my daughter come home and say she got to pick 3 friends who maybe she wanted to be in class with, and you were saying that came from the student voice conversations?
That was like an idea, like student voice in school-wide decision-making. So like all of us, as we're leading our work, we're thinking about like ways that we can incorporate student voice. And so every year we do class distributions. And so I said, I'd really like to hear who students would like to be with when we're creating these voices.
When I saw that, I thought maybe it came from like the district's crisis team, like as a recommendation or something. So I guess that made me think, like, were there any recommendations from that team that are kind of ongoing through the summer, like into the next year?
They've said that we just have to monitor internally, sort of like what are events coming up and what are things that we need to be proactive in thinking about creating a plan for. And then continuing to offer like individual supports for students.
And then I was wondering about the summer camp program that I think you talked about last time. Is that still moving forward?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's where we've got about 150 students who have already expressed interest. Or are you talking about Apollo?
I'm talking about, that's the one that happens every year, the 150.
Yes.
The Peirce one,
So
but then now there's a new one coming, right?
Yes. They were working on getting their paperwork submitted, so we approved it. They have to be approved by the district, and then they have to recruit. So we approved it here, we're waiting on the approval from the district, but I'm not sure if they've submitted if they've submitted everything.
Okay. So how will we hear about that?
It would be emailed out to
You'll
families.
just yes.
Yeah, I'll actually ask where that's at.
It's still supposed to be this summer though?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll ask.
Cool, thanks.
I just have a question about the referrals. Is there a better way to look at this? Because since it's all cumulative from top to bottom, right? So it's kind of hard. I'm wondering if there's like a way of comparing the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
I mean, you can look at the percentages as they've shifted from beginning of the year to the end of the year. That's one way. You could look at like the total number of referrals from month to month. We had the largest number of referrals from April 10th to May 15th, and we've had like a 1 month span because the last large increase was November to January. I was asking Mr. Lee about that, and he said that he's really forcing teachers to use the referral system and not intervening beforehand. And so he thinks that that's contributing to the increase in referrals.
So can I ask a question? So he's asking teachers instead of like having a conversation with a student.
No, when things are going to administration, Shelton was like still, I think intercepting a lot of things that should have gone through the official referral system.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Whereas Mr. Lee is like, we are not following, like, if it is an incident that does need to be escalated, you can't just find me, like, you have to enter it.
Got it. Okay.
It was kind of coming across just verbally and like dealing with it instead of going through the referral system.
No, there's things that that there will be an incident that happens that does require, per our guidance, an escalation to a discipline. That sometimes we think people were circumventing actually logging it in the system and going to Shelton and saying, here's this incident, and then Shelton's having to enter it after the fact, which then removed it from being a classroom referral to a school referral. So then that would not have been included in this. Whereas now we're saying if this is an incident that does require escalation per our matrix, then you as a teacher have to enter it in.
And so that 21 increase from April to May is an increase of those originating from the classroom, or is it?
These are all from the classroom. These are all classroom-based referrals.
Okay. So it's not retroactively trying to help like document things that happened before. It's
No.
just
No,
increasing the actual use of that.
correct.
So the jump in May is because of the way that the system's being used, or the jump in January?
No, the November to January, that was 2 months span.
Oh, that's why.
So you figure we were averaging about 10 per month early on, and then we hit like a flat line when nothing was being escalated. And then it's now spiking back up because people are actually having to enter it into the system. And we just want clean data so that we know like what does this really look like. Because if there's like referrals that are happening but they're not being reported, then that doesn't really help us make improvement.
It makes the numbers look better, but
And so for a while, I was like, okay, our numbers are looking really good, but now I'm like, oh, maybe it wasn't that good. I don't know how much was being intercepted.
Question on this also, if you're done. Do we have this data broken down by grade?
We can do it by grade.
Okay.
And we did do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that
We
was my
did do
question.
that, which is when it was, I think it was like January, where we then had individual conversations with teachers because we were looking at the data by grade level and by like frequent people that were referring it.
Yeah.
And so then there were 2 grade levels that there were intentional conversations with, and then there were, I think, 2 individual teachers that there were intentional conversations with.
Okay. Yeah, and the nature of my question is around the 80-20. Most of the time, the nature of the report will be just 20%. So by having additional data, we could narrow down to that
Correct.
20%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Nicole's question about the feedback from student that would like to have, or who they would like to possibly have as classmates. I'm asking that both seriously and sort of facetiously. Are the parents going to have any kind of input to that? I'm asking because specifically, there are some friends, but I don't want the kids to get too friendly in the classroom. But I understand the need I think it's great, but I don't. I also want to know if there's an option to be notified. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know if that's necessary.
I think the teacher, so I would say if parents have like a specific question, they should reach out to their child's teacher to just say, hey, can you just make note to make sure that they are not with this kid?
Yeah.
And then they can make a note. We are tracking that. And then the teachers are also making notes of like, do not put this kid with this kid.
Got it.
So
I
like we
can
have some like
actually
internal
piggyback off that.
coordination.
We actually were sorting today in grade levels
Yeah.
and like we know our students best and we know
Yep.
which ones probably should not be in the same classroom together.
Yep.
So like at least the first grade team, we have like note cards with like their names on them and we kind of sort them out. And then we
Okay.
were looking to make sure like, is this person with a friend or, someone that they chose from that list?
Sure.
And so that's how we did it with first grade. I'm not sure about other grade levels, but I would assume that's how they were.
Similar. Okay, great.
So.
Great.
But we do ask for notes because I do tell my teachers, sometimes we, over the summer, are having to move kids based on a variety of factors. And so we don't know, like, some of like those internal things. So we do ask them to document it for us so that when we're making changes, we have the full picture.
Great.
Quick question on that, and I don't want to take up too much more time. What was the nature of the problem we're trying to solve by asking students to pick a few friends? Why I'm asking is, classroom is supposed to be, focused on instruction and learning. They can get together with their friends at recess. And second, for me, adaptability is important. So yes, you may go without your friends for 60 minutes, but as part of growing and learning, you'll see them later. So that's why I'm asking. Like, what are we trying to solve?
So one is to just hear from students, like one is to increase student voice. The other is that I hear what you're saying. We have a lot of, a significant increase actually in anxiety amongst children. And sometimes having like access to one friend like makes a huge difference in making sure that that kid will actually show up to school. And so just wanting to make sure that we are like meeting like multiple needs. And it's not just from like an anxiety perspective, but it's just nice to like know you have that like one person in the class that you can look forward to seeing. Doesn't mean you're gonna sit next to them all day long. But we find that it makes a big difference.
I mean, classrooms are also about community. So, there's teaching and learning, but there's the human beings and the community you build. And sometimes, like Lori was saying, it's some students really function better when there's that one trusted person that they know.
And I do hear you though, because like like some of it is like you just gotta like learn to navigate like difficult situations, which is very easy for some kids to do and really hard for others. Like, so it's trying to come up with a balance.
Absolutely. The nature of my question is, yes, it's important to have that community, but it's also important to build in that resilience into our kids so they can handle the uncertainties. They may go to different school later on, so how are they going to handle that if now their best friend goes to a different school than they are? And we've been telling them that, hey, you're going to be with your friends throughout the next 4 years. We're setting them up for a major anxiety down the road.
Yeah,
So
you're
that's really
correct. You're correct. That's something that like you're like, it's a struggle right now because, yes.
okay.
And also even like, can it become more cliquey? That's what I would wonder, if like, you've already got kids that feel on the outside, you know, and then when these, you know, kids that have really formed strong bonds are even stronger because they're in the same classroom. But I'm not gonna say too much because my kids are over there and they are listening carefully.
But we're not guaranteeing, so one is that we're not guaranteeing that they will even be with one. And it, like, we are hoping and we are gonna make every effort possible that they will all have one. But we are also like trying to like make sure that like those like cliques are not intentionally programmed. We can't control if like that happens, but then those become like teachable opportunities for
also,
us.
sorry to interrupt, if I may, what's right for one student is not right for all students. Some students may need that in order to access learning, but the majority of students probably maybe don't, depending on their situation. So it's complicated.
No, yeah, there's a need for balance. So I think one thing I would ask is there a way to track some data? Is there improvement in the level of anxiety? I don't know how we're tracking the anxiety, by the way, but is there a way to track, okay, maybe the next year or so, wow, we've seen a difference in maybe focus in the class or just, I don't know, maybe the level of referral goes down, right? Some way to bring them back to data so we can say, wow, we've seen tremendous amount of improvement in this area because of this. We can talk about it later and think through it. It might be tough to track. But
Yeah,
then we could scale it across the
like you said. Very hard to isolate that with metrics. I have a question somewhat related to that. Don't hit me because of this question, but I'm looking at the behavioral health team data and I'm wondering, does that ever get analyzed alongside the discipline data? I mean, you would probably need, you know, software to do that, but the behavioral health team data and the discipline data, just, you know, knowing, like I'm thinking a lot about student mental health right now for some other things I'm working on. And so I'm just curious, like, do the conversations when you all are looking at these data points ever intersect?
The BHT actually does look at student behavior because sometimes BHT referrals result from behavior data. So like there is that happening in like an organic way in those discussions. So it's not like we're gonna pull up all of this data, it's sort of like happening through the
I mean, it would
process.
be a lot of data, that's why I said don't hit me with that suggestion. It's a lot to look at, like I'm just trying to process the BH data, you know, on my screen and trying to do that in isolation, you know, not being somebody who works in the school. So I want to acknowledge that, yeah, it's a lot of data to look at one time. But it makes me super curious about how much, like, you know, anxiety or depression or
Anxiety,
those things are intersecting with behavior. I mean,
it's high through 504 plans and through BHT.
Sorry, can you clarify 504?
504 plans, which are written through the case management office
Okay.
and through our behavioral health team
Oh,
and counseling
BHT.
supports or small group supports or
Okay.
individual check-in, check-out plans.
Okay. And when do we start to see the anxiety, like what grade level?
Early on.
Early on.
Yeah. we are like hypothesizing some reasons. We think that technology is having a lot to do with this. And like the lack of opportunity for kids to like socialize. The pandemic having an impact on that, but like some of these things, like kids are watching like YouTube channels that are like really like interesting. I'm like, what is this? Like, I am confused. Like, they're just like, they're interesting. Sometimes.
Building on that, there's a lot right now in the zeitgeist about exactly what you're talking about, technology and how it affects children's mental health. I'm forgetting the author's name. He just published a book about it, and he has 3 sort of clear next steps. One of them is establishing no phones in the school. And I actually don't really know anything about.
We don't allow phones in school.
Okay.
Like, we actually don't. So what, as we've been interviewing people,
Yes.
people are asking a lot about what policies are. We don't have an issue with phones in the classroom. We have an issue with phones during recess and lunch.
Oh,
But we don't see it, like,
you don't see it in the classroom.
like, people will tell kids, like, put your phone away if it comes out, but it's not a distraction like it is in the high school. High school, they're
So
like
bad in high
rampantly,
schools.
like, all over the place.
It's ridiculous. I was in 5 different maybe 6 different high schools in March for a job I was doing, and I saw 2 classrooms where there were no phones out, and made a point to ask those teachers, like, how did you accomplish this? And they were like, from the beginning of the year, very, very carefully. But I mean, they're everywhere. I couldn't handle that
Well,
as a teacher right now.
Disrupts learning.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's becoming a conversation in schools.
Well, and there's I forget what study was done that connected this spike in depression and anxiety among adolescents as sort of starting to really increase right around 2010 when smartphones came on the scene.
The ancient generation, that's me.
I feel like there's some correlation with Lake's question too about the students' selection of friends, because to me, like, I don't know, I think it's an interesting point to bring up. And to me, it brings in a deeper question of like, how much do we support, like, bend to support the kids? And then how much is too much to where it's like, you know, clearly you're going to have inconveniences. I mean, even for me, I have twins and we've decided that they aren't in the same class. And so it's a similar decision of like, it would be easier for them to be in the same class, but we have reasons to not. But even and then bringing in this facet of technology, it's like, if I had my best friend with me, you know, would I be, even if it's not as much of a problem here of being on your phone in the classroom, but, you know, that level of human engagement in the classroom would definitely seem more easily fostered by having those people. And I can imagine the teachers, it's a balance of like, if they get into their own little bubbles and aren't engaging, but with that information of the anxiety being such an issue too, it's like, to me, that could be a really positive part of ensuring that people can feel good about, well, at least I know Jim's with me next year and I feel better about that.
This is a much deeper topic. I think I've seen that same author, NYU professor. He wrote a book on this. He's been on the speaking tour. But essentially, it's going to require a partnership between parents at home and teachers at school. One side cannot do it. You are set up to fail. Even from the classroom to recess. And obviously, research shows that community is key to human well-being. I was born in a village where there was only a community. That's the only thing that matters. So it's the disconnect. It's a problem. So I agree. If students are able to connect in the classroom, that will help. But if the phones is added to that mix, then it's much deeper. So I think I would love to discuss this and maybe, discuss with another parent group to get their feedback, because we need to connect it to what's happening at home, right? Um, to truly have a successful approach at this. It's a problem that is a global problem. So first of all, let's just recognize that. So no one school alone is going to solve it. But how could we try to help our kids here with that transition?
As you said that, it made me think about how we had roles in the LSC about like bringing in educational courses. And maybe that's something that you guys can think of even for, the next 2 years, of how maybe there's an opportunity where we could have somebody come in as a school-wide lecture for families to just learn about what the effects of social media, the effects of, how it might cause more ADHD. Like, I don't know all the implications, but that might be something worth pursuing, because I think the families at Peirce love the Peirce community, and if we can strengthen it even more so, I think parents would be really on board with, if we all just delete social media off our kids' phones, but like there's things to think about as a community. What would help mental health, especially.
Yeah.
There was a conversation at Coonley that I forget, it might have been their Friends of Group that sponsored it, but it was, they rented this movie, Screenagers, that you can only get like through the filmmaker. It's not like something you can log on to the internet and find, and had a conversation like what you're talking about.
Yeah. My last comment on this, and I can shut up. It's a collective trap where if you decide at home to take away your kid's phone and they go to school and all their friends have phone, it's not going to work.
It does though. I do that, and he has no interest. I think he's an anomaly, but
Yes, overall, the peer
it can
pressure
work.
is so much more stronger than what we can do at home. So that's why it has to.
Yeah.
Yeah, few exceptional kids can definitely do it, but it has to be all of us deciding that the minute you arrive at school, you put your phone in the locker room. 3:05, you can pick it up, right? You can call me on the way home, right? Or something like that. But I
There's
like
an
the
article.
idea of getting something broader to the entire community.
I'll send you all this article. I was just looking for it and I can't remember where it was, but it profiled a district who did this recently, or maybe it was just an individual school, and they got all the arguments, all the arguments from teachers, from students, and they developed answers for every single one of those arguments. And over the course of the year, most people in the community came around, at least according to the article. And they interviewed students in the article who were like, yeah, I hated it at first, but now I really pay attention in school. So, if I find it, I'll send it.
Very good. Thank you, Lori, and everyone else. Next item is the budget. I sent a couple of internal accounts for review.
So I'll make a motion to approve the internal accounts from April, or was it March and April?
Yeah.
Did I send that in April?
I thought
I
so.
think it's just.
Let me check.
It says March.
Yeah,
on the
because I think
document.
April is not finalized yet. Like, it's always like 1 month behind, and we've been getting them like right after our meetings.
My
So,
apologies.
yeah,
I don't
so
wanna
just for
type it.
March. I might have said both, but we did not get it in time for this one. So I'll make a motion to approve the internal accounts for the month of March.
I'll second.
I have a question. Lori and I were having a discussion this morning about budget and that sort of thing. So Lori, this is kind of me processing our conversation, but can you talk about the ending ledger balance is $153,631.35. And I know that you talked about spending down, and I'm wondering what is that balance, how does that compare to spending down the budget? Is it like the CPS appropriated dollars you spend down because you can't get them back? But this is like maybe accumulations of fundraising money. And can you just talk about where
Yes,
that comes
in
from?
our budget meeting from April, the council voted to move 45,000 that's still in there, but will move over once July 1st comes. $45,000 from leasing to the part-time bucket for lunch and recess coaches. 37,792 from student fees to subscriptions and materials. 7,400 from Gust Foundation to substitutes. 1,393 from general funds to instructional materials and supplies, and 9,725 from before and after care to instructional materials and supplies. So that's the huge chunk of what's currently in there.
Got it. Thank you.
We had a whopping 2 cents
Yeah,
adjustment.
that's been on there forever. It won't come off for whatever
I'd like to
reason.
get more information on that.
I mean, we just had our like audit that I'm waiting for final results on. They were like, what's this 2 cents? We're like, you tell us. Like, we've been trying to get rid of this and no one will like take it off of
You
here.
are off by 2 cents. It's important. Good.
Rounding it.
Yeah. 0 and rounding.
I think we were at, you just second,
Yeah.
you seconded.
Yeah, so with the discussion, okay, yeah, so all in favor? Thank you. Public participation, we have a sign-up sheet.
It's actually attached to the,
Sorry.
principal report. Oh, it's right there.
I wanted to check the inbox real quick.
I have something on behalf of a parent, but I wanted to open it up to you guys.
What's that?
I have something from a parent, but, okay. There's a question about GSA, so just people that don't know. GSA stands for Gender Sexuality Alliance Club, and there was a goal by 2024 to establish a club in each school.
Yes.
And so there was questions about, is that gonna happen?
It is, yes, and so ironically, so I wanna say maybe a month and a half ago, I should have put it in here. 2 of my staff members, Mr. Lerner is supporting, I think, 5th, 6th, and then Paul Papadopoulos is supporting 7th, 8th, or vice versa. They advertised it to students about a month ago or so, and I asked Annie Park, who is helping to coordinate, if we can please put that in our newsletter, so that's actually going out in this coming week's newsletter,
Okay.
that we have established it, and we have 2 staff members that are running it. We need to think about what this will look like next year. Can we offer something to like primary grades? Like the challenge is staffing and then making sure that it's something that happens during the school day, because some students do not want their families to know that they're participating, and if you do it after school, you need permission to participate after school. And so we've just been trying to like continue to create opportunities for students at all grade levels to
Student
participate.
privacy.
Correct.
So I admit, you said Mr. Lerner is most likely gonna do,
It's already started. It's
Okay.
been meeting, for like last month and a half, last month or so.
okay.
Can you expand on what it is?
It's like an opportunity for students who want to be in a space that, talks about like it's an affinity space for students that may or may not be part of an LGBTQ community, because it's for like gay, straight students, students that are gender non-conforming, like, and then the students and the staff members drive the agenda of what's talked about. Sometimes it's just like being in a space together.
So what is that, coming, like, what's being substituted for that time?
It's their lunch, their lunch and recess.
And it is also a part of it that schools are required to include LGBTQ plus issues within the social science curriculum for grades K through 12.
That should be in place.
Okay, that's not a part, maybe that's not a part of this, but within this office. And then who was the other teacher?
So it was Mr. Lerner and Mr. Cole Papadopoulos.
How do you spell that?
It's on look at the teachers, the principal's report,
Want me to read it out to you?
second page.
Yeah.
PAPA.
DOPOULOS.
And they would do a certain section of students.
One does 5th, 6th, the other is working with 7th during lunch periods. I think one meets on a Monday, the other meets on a Friday.
The question on, maybe I missed this, so the staff run those 2 meetings or sessions? And what's the nature of like the meeting? Is it like open to the students sharing
Yeah.
their thoughts? Or is there an agenda?
I don't even know. I think, I don't know how they've structured it. I mean, it can be done in different ways. There could be like a specific thing that people are gonna talk about on a weekly basis. It can be just a gathering space and there's no agenda. And it can be like students are coming with something that they want to talk about. So it really depends on like what that initial conversation was between the staff member and the students. And I may not even be privy to that information. Like depending on, because some of it is confidential in nature.
Okay. And how did this come about initially? Like who's,
We've had it for like in years past, but more recently there's state policy that says that schools have to have this. But we were trying to do it before like state policy was even saying that we had to do it. So all schools have to have that in place.
okay, a space for student, okay. Then my other question is around the student privacy and parents. I think you mentioned that it has to be during school, so some students who don't want their parents to know have that privacy.
That's correct.
Since all students are minors anyway, I'm trying to understand here, where is the line between what parents should know and what parents is kept from parents? I'm just trying to
Yeah, this is
understand
something
that.
that the law says that this is something we cannot disclose to parents, the law.
Because I don't think I was aware of it like this. Do you think it's appropriate that we make sure parents know that this is available?
Yes, that's why I wanted to put it in.
Oh, the music, okay.
Okay, so the parents know it's available. The parents cannot know if their kids is involved.
If the kid has a relationship with the parent, they can say, hey, mom, dad, I'm like participating in this group. Some kids, they cannot share this with their parents. I've like personally had a situation with another kid who ended up staying with me for 2 weeks because of this issue.
Yeah.
So it's a real issue for kids that are part of the LGBTQ community. They cannot talk about it with their families.
Yeah.
Is there any other emails?
There's one. This is a follow-up from last week. I just wanted to ensure that the conversation continues about there being opportunities for children to have centers and playtime in kindergarten and beyond, without there being repercussions for teachers that provide those opportunities.
I mean, Kristen can give an update on where we're at with that.
Yeah, so that's actually something that Kim and I have actually been working on. So Kim can move it to the UIQ coordinator. That's something that her and I have been working on, making sure that we are following district guidelines, but along with following district guidelines, making sure that we're staying true to the tenets of what play is and what that looks like in your classroom. So her and I are actually creating guidance that has the UIQ language of what play looks like in the classroom. And the big thing that we are taking away from that was that play should be happening in the classroom. What that should look like is just ensure that play is intentionally connected to centers or to content, and it can be in centers. There's one example. I think one thing that our staff has done a great job of is integrating centers in the classroom, but then just being very intentional about that those centers are connected to content and there's play involved, and students do have a choice in that, in making, when engaging in that play. In that time is uninterrupted, it's not an hour of uninterrupted, just we're at one center, but it's that you have multiple centers that you're going to maybe 20 minutes. It might look like you might go to a teacher-led one, you might go to one that's independent work or something, but then you might go to another one where you have different games that you choose to engage with, or different ways you can engage in learning that's aligned to that in play that's uninterrupted, that's also aligned to content. And we actually already brought some of the language that we put together, and we're already collaborating with the kindergarten team to make sure that when we have like the same idea, the same definition of what we're talking about play, what that looks like, but also making sure that we're getting input from the perspective from our kindergarten teachers of what this will look like in our classroom. And something we actually had a conversation today, and that came from that conversation that was really enlightening, was that this can also happen during science. It doesn't only need to happen during math and reading. It should actually be happening during all of our core subjects. So that was some clarity that was nice that we got to have from our conversation today. So our goal for Kim and I, our goal is to meet with kindergarten team again and finalize our document and have something that we have shared not only internally but also with the community. So this will be in our handbook, and this will just be part of our expectations of what this looks like in the classroom.
So I think there's been a misconception that teachers are not allowed to engage children in play in the primary grades, and that's never been communicated from school administration to teachers. What has been communicated, which I said this last time, is that teachers have to teach science. And so science in the past was a period when kids were all in free choice centers. And so then the teachers were looking at this as then when are kids allowed to play? Well, kids should be playing throughout the day in their learning. And so that's where like we've had to sort of like redefine what does this mean, but we should not be sending a message that kids cannot play in a kindergarten classroom. That's not the case.
Is there like a district, well, first of all, are they using Skyline for science?
Yes.
So like, is the curriculum such that either the district or just an interpretation of the curriculum might be that like, I have to do it this one way? I'm just trying to understand like the feedback you're both giving, but then hearing from parents, reading parents' comments, and like, where's that? And actually I talked to one teacher too, but like, where's the disconnect? Is it, because sometimes I know the district will say, do it this way.
It's because play has only been seen as free choice play, but we have coined ourselves as a school that is a play-based program. When you're saying you're play-based, that means that your play is integrated and a part of your learning. Mm-hmm. It's not just free choice. Mm-hmm. So we've been mismessaging who we are when we're saying that we are a play-based kindergarten program. Mm-hmm. Because play-based means that your learning is happening as you're playing.
And so it sounds like what you're saying also is that parents, non-educator parents, might not understand what you just said.
Yes. And so we've had to just like make sure that we are like understanding why that misunderstanding is out there, which has taken us some time to like really get to like, what is at the root of this? Mm-hmm. Because we've never said kids cannot play in kindergarten. We've said we have to teach science.
And I think just to add on to what you're saying there, this was also a crucial year for the science curriculum. So, right, we have the Skyline curriculum, which we've got some of the feedback, because Lori asked for feedback from the students in the book. I think that was great, is that they love science. So that's one thing from some of our kindergarten students, so it's something that's been great to hear. But part of this is that this was our first year of really implementing the curriculum, and we did reach out to the district about how does this need to be taught in what order, we can figure out how does this sort of our units, the order, and so this is a big learning year. And so based on the conversation that we had, and today we were talking about, okay, so now we've learned, where the plants and life cycle, and using all the things that, that plants have, how can we create a center, a learning center that is aligned to that core content that we're learning in science from our skyline, but then continue that learning in a center that's where students are exploring its play-based, right? Where you can, I was talking to Ken about it, and they were talking about sunflower seeds, and so they were saying, so why can't we make a center where it's that we're using all the parts of the seeds that we were making in the sunflower seed butter or something. So that way it's still, that's how you're integrating that play, that really intentional play that's aligned to the content as well.
I'm proud of myself. I didn't say anything. I was just listening. This is the work I've been doing for the last 3 years, integrating play in the kindergarten, and I'm not going to be doing it next year. But I've reached out to Kristen, and I hope to
It's your expertise.
keep that going, just because I'm really passionate about it. I'll be doing it next year. Yeah.
Very good. This is it as far as what we're seeing there. All right. Moving on to next section, community group reports. First one is FOP. We did receive see, as I was just talking, another one came through 3 minutes ago. Just a quick note on play. As those decisions around play for kindergarten are made, I hope they can be communicated to families. I'm not a parent concerned about play, as my child can speak to his play opportunities at length throughout his day, but it may help folks understand the shifts that are made. Play is incorporated throughout my son's kindergarten class and the curricular program offered through CKLA Amplify /Skyline/IBPYB unit and the math. This is somebody that knows what they're talking about. So yeah, that's the other comment. Very good. Excellent. So we did hear, so we asked for community group reports. First one from Friends of Peirce, and I can read that real quick. Looking for new board members. Elections will be in June. You do not have to be a Peirce parent. Please write Chad Curry at, the email address is chad@friendsofpeirce.org if interested. Again, that's for board members for Friends of Peirce. Panther Ball is coming up May 31st. We just went through the approval here. We had our last kid nights out, and it was a blast. Thanks to all the kids who made these memorable. There were a lot of the higher grade students that actually participated as monitors for the younger grades. That was great. That's the only thing for FOP. PSO.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know that we were supposed to that up. We did teacher appreciation week last week, and we had like some new stuff, so we tried new stuff, and I think it went pretty well. We'll get to that in teachers.
It was lovely.
Yeah, and thank you to you for spearheading it, sharing it. It was awesome. You did good.
And then we are supporting the arts team at Fiesta this year. And I'm starting with all the wall canvases, so we don't have to throw away a ton of paper this year. And that's going. And then we started the fundraising process for teacher gifting. And that basically wraps up the year. Oh, and the sports break credit is coming out in the next couple weeks as well. And we're working on that.
Very good.
That's it.
Thank you. All right, so we got The next one is REP, Racial Equity Parents Group. 3 updates. Our Racial Equity Parents Group would like to invite community members interested in getting more involved to provide their energy and care to support the school community with planning over the summer. The email address is reppierce, so reppierce @gmail.com. Next one is RP invites the Peirce community to hold space with each other on Tuesday, May 21st at 6:30 at First Sip Coffee. We will be joined by Healing to Action, who's partnering with caregivers of our school community to facilitate the healing circle. Spanish interpretation devices will be available. This is the first of many conversations to create and build support for one another. Healing to Action is a survivor-led and survivor-centered organization working to end gender-based violence by building the leadership and collective power of survivors most impacted. The third item is researchers at Northwestern are seeking to explore how white 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students at Peirce understand, describe, and make meaning around their racial experiences in the school. These 30-minute to 1-hour one-on-one interviews will inform efforts at Peirce to build an equitable and inclusive school environment for all students. This is part of a series of related projects taking place across the school. To connect your child to this important research, contact reppierce@gmail.com.
Can I just add a quick note to that?
Sure.
The researcher, Brandon, got in touch with me because my child participated and said they especially need 6th, 7th, and 8th grade boys, white boys, to talk about their white identity. They have plenty of girls, apparently.
Question on the research. What's the connection to the school and who gives them approval to? Okay.
So I can answer that. We've had a partnership with Northwestern, I want to say for 7 or 8 years. And we generally will look at what are things that we're trying to make sense of in the school and how can we utilize an outside researcher in collecting data and being very intentional and thoughtful to help us get information that will help us improve the conditions. And this particular partnership started with Mesman Destin, who's a community member and researcher at Northwestern, he had personal interest in understanding mentorship between college students to high school students to elementary school students. And we started there. And he had college students working with Sen high school students working with Peirce middle school students. And then from that research came, I think it was getting a better sense of how students see themselves in relationship to the school and to the community. And that was happening while we were also trying to understand students' racialized experiences in relationship to the school and to the wider community. And so then we started to engage more deeply in getting the feedback from students of color, Black students initially, and then Latinx students, and then that's helped us create our affinity spaces for Black and Latinx students. And now we also know that part of this work is also how do we understand what the white students' experience is in this, and how are we also making sure that we are intentionally talking about race, but then also creating spaces for white students to process their own racial identity in relationship to self and the wider community. And so this has been just something that we've continued to engage with Northwestern on, and then they get board approval from Northwestern and from the district to be able to actually do the research. It's very hard to get a research study with children approved. They have to go through an extensive process for that to happen. And then we've also been having conversations about wanting to understand sort of what is the experience of students who identify as part of the LGBTQ community. So that's like a possible like extension, but we wanted to make sure that our work with affinity spaces was a little bit more solid before we go into something else. So it's a partnership.
So it must be so hard to get that approved.
It is.
Very good. Any other comments? All right. Moving on to the community reports. Beth didn't get into that. I do think they had a meeting.
They did. I had included some things in my principal's report where it's like with the help of Ms. Campos, Mr. Lerner has begun networking with community partners that may be able to provide free bilingual cooking and nutrition classes for families next year as part of our BEC, in addition to the Dia del Niño celebration that was organized by the BEC.
And the fiesta is coming, and I know they were looking for volunteers for Dia del Niño, so they're probably going to need some to hang up that art, I think, right?
They put out the word on, at least it was on Peirce. I saw that, and, probably on PSO's page. Was it there or?
The request for assistance, yeah.
I think it might have been in, I'm trying to remember if it was.
I saw it.
The room wrap email.
Yeah. That's right, the room wrap email. Next item, equity committee.
We had our last meeting. Chime in, Rocky. I'll try to, I think suffice it to say, we talked a lot about, I think in our last 2 meetings, we talked a lot about socioeconomic equity in school and just, opportunities, equitable opportunities for access to a variety of things happening in the school. That's sort of the overarching topic. I think. You want to add anything?
Yeah. I was actually going to talk about this in public participation, but it does kind of go nicely with what we talked about at the meeting. We kind of have been having conversations about fundraising and trying to get some clarity, which I think we did when Kathleen emailed the council about. First, there was confusion about when you host a fundraising event off-site of Peirce, does that require the LSC to approve that fundraiser? And we heard back from CPS that said, yes, we do. Is that?
If money is being raised
Yeah,
specifically
for the school, yeah.
If money is being raised specifically for the school. And we also had a conversation about how there is a lot of fundraising kind of popping up that we're not always sure how the funds are being used. There seems to be a much looser protocol for a fundraiser established and then the LSC approving it and then how those funds are then supporting the school. So I don't at all want to send a message that fundraising is some nefarious or ill, cause, I don't want to draw that correlation at all. But I do think in future LSC meetings that we need much more clarity and I think a finer lens on the equity portion of fundraising and how that is going to affect Peirce in the long run.
The FOPs circulate a memorandum of understanding at some point. Does that sound familiar?
They circulated those to parent groups.
And that's the one that we said that we couldn't sign. So that's the other thing too, like trying to figure out all the lenses, right? Whatever other items, because there was also a conversation about, is this enough fundraising? Is it too much fundraising? What are we relying on? Why are we relying on this, right? So I do think that there's an opportunity there to continue. My main concern is lean involvement, right? I mean, we can talk about what we want and what can be done, what can be done. If the money's not coming in, like this conversation is completely moot. And I'm really concerned that we don't have enough support, or there's not enough. We have an opportunity to continue getting more people involved in this process, and that's true for all parent groups. Like I think we've done a really, really good job, I hope, for the past couple of years trying to get people to be more present. But sometimes when we have public participation or we hear some of the comments, it's still not enough, right? Whether it's the communication, whether it's the groups themselves, folks knowing what's happening, what's going on. I do think that there's always opportunity, and perhaps sometimes when you talk to some parents, there's also there are also situations where they say, yeah, I think everything's fine. So the opportunity is there to continue getting more people involved to make that process even more widespread, I guess.
Do you mean more people involved, like engagement of people to find out, to gauge their sentiment about?
I mean,
fundraising,
just
or
showing
what do you
up
say
to
more
be
about
here and be of service. Not everyone, I think, any kind of events that are put together, in my experience, we very often see familiar faces.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Regardless of
The
what the
event,
event is
of what
about.
it is, and again, like I said, whether it's Fall Fest, even the fundraiser, that the move-a-thon, these types of things, there's more and more, community involvement. I'd like to see that continue to happen, because I do think that as people see more of that, they're not just going to say, oh, okay, this is happening, I don't need to be involved.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm appreciative and skeptical at the same time. Like, for example, we have an AAPI event happening at the end of this month where Mandala is going to come do a performance. So that's an instance of art partnership that the fundraising contributed. In that case, my children who are cultural minorities get to see that and experience that in their school. That's amazing, and I'm extremely appreciative of that. And I know fundraising takes time, commitment, energy. I don't want to disregard any of that, but I do think that there's a lot of gaps in safeguarding, because we could also, as the LSC, be audited if there are issues with how fundraising is coming in and how that money is being spent, and if it's not approved. There's a lot of we're putting ourselves in also a vulnerable situation as the council. So those are some of the things that I want to have a tighter set of procedures.
So that there's more clarity.
Yeah.
Question. You guys speak of the potential gaps in equity.
Yeah.
If different people are raising different funds, they're going through different events, you're not tracking. Can you point to one or two things that, because the way I see it is, there's lack of money overall.
Right.
We could always use more money. So I do not want to discourage
Right.
anyone raising money. Then second is, okay, where is that money going? Obviously, that makes sense to track that.
Yes.
Right? Then Matthew, you're talking about overall community involvement, getting more parents, getting more community members to participate in events that are not fundraising related. So there's sort of three stuff here. For the equity committee,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit more about these gaps? For example, if I want to do fundraising, I love running. What if I want to do a 5K, raise some money, and that goes toward the kids who love running? Is that an equity issue? I just sort of understand
No.
the nature of the.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of solid fundraising we can do. But Kathleen, do you want to mention what's
Well,
happened in?
I mean, I just anecdotally have heard from maybe a couple handful of parents who feel alienated by Panther ball pricing. And I think I'll couple that anecdote with just, I think, an elaboration, or maybe a comment piggybacking on Matthew, what you were saying about more engagement. Broadly speaking, seeing the same people, and I've noticed too, like when I'm volunteering, it's kind of the same people, or when I'm when we're here, we see the same lovely people showing up to our meetings. And it makes me wonder, do people, this is completely speculative, not based on anything, but are we centering the community's wants and needs when we create events? You know, do they, like you talked about a cultural event that really appeals to your family? Is it about having more of those? I'm just, again, throwing spaghetti at the wall here. Are people feeling that the school doesn't represent them and what they want to see in terms of events? Again, that's speculative, not based on anything that I've heard. But like when you see lack of engagement, it makes me wonder what's going on out there. And whether what's sort of on the docket as far as events, whether they're fundraisers or not, speak to the very, I mean, we have a huge community with tons of cultures and backgrounds.
But we have a
and
ton of people that come
socioeconomic.
to our community events. So I don't know that the like attendance of our community events is the issue. It sounds like the question is, how do we get families to volunteer to support those events? And that's like, those are different issues.
Yeah.
Also, I know this seems like an extreme example, but what can happen is children's ability, families' abilities to fundraise turns into social capital. So it's like, it's publicized. Who is fundraising what? This is not happening at Peirce, and I don't want it to see happening at Peirce. So this is why I would like to just have I would like to continue having discussions as a council of like, what are the constraints of a fundraising? How do we ensure that children at the school don't know who's fundraising what and there's no rewards attached to it? That can happen at a school where children's families fundraise a certain amount and the kids get awards at the school. Again, not happening here, but it happens all over the city.
Yeah,
it can easily flow into that.
This is for me, this is a complete corollary to the conversation that we had on April 25th
Exactly.
about the budget.
Yeah.
Why are we having this conversation?
Because
Why?
people don't want to invest in lobbying Springfield, quite frankly.
Okay,
this
so
has
yeah,
been
that's
happening in
that's
the city
that's
for
a
years.
huge issue, right? And it's that's the part that makes it that much more complicated for parents, right? Like, I mean, like even the ones that want to be involved, what's out there, what's being taught or what's being told, right? Like, you know, showing, well, we have these events, we have this money that's coming in. Oh, so you must be doing okay. No, it's that is absolutely
It's a
not the
Band-Aid,
case.
like I said on our April meeting.
And it's really frustrating, honestly. Like because we have, participating or attending other LSC meetings in other parts of the city. There are some local school council where the members don't even know each other, right? Like they don't know that this guy was some part of the LSC. They don't know about fundraising. They don't know about there's a severe lack of resources, and that whole concept or that whole construct is what really is really frustrating sometimes, right? Like trying to figure out the best way to address this. But we also have an opportunity for the community, like I said.
It's not sexy to anybody, like galas are much a sexier topic. I mean that loosely speaking. Planning them is fun, being at them is fun, but I mean, I will bang this gong until I'm dead that nothing is going to change with the funding unless people are willing to organize across schools to lobby Springfield to fully fund schools. We're one of the worst states in terms of public school funding, and it hasn't changed since my kid's been
I also think
alive.
What I just said is not a popular opinion at Peirce, and like, being on this council can be a little isolating in that sense. So it's not something I love to talk about or like love to point out. It is something I'm really worried about and would like us to take more serious consideration of in the next 2 years.
Maybe one more comment. So I hear you in terms of educational funding, right? It's a long-term issue where at the state level, even at the federal level, there needs to be more funding there, right? So there are a lot of organizations that are involved in that, and we could individually choose to keep pushing. But at the school level, even when I went to a suburb school in Grand Rapids University, our high school had one of the best sport programs. It was entirely funded by fundraising, people who were enthusiastic about sport, right, and football, right? So what choices can we make to say, okay, we need to support these programs at a school level. We're not going to wait for state funding. It may never come, right? Then whoever is interested in the community about that particular topic, how do we set them up to have the free rein to go and raise as much money as they can to support those programs? And then where equity should come in is once we raise that money, right, everyone should have equal access to that. The ticket to that ball shouldn't be too high where no one can afford to attend, right? So that's sort of what I'm thinking. So how do we encourage people to raise as much money as possible, but make sure that everyone has access to that?
I'll just add, I think there's like a lot to work on and talk about here, and I think the equity committee is like the place for it. Like, I feel like we created this committee for this type of purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I would encourage like that to happen at that committee and to like pull in the wider community and collaborate with FOP and start there.
It's not well attended. It's usually an echo chamber of Rocky, me, Miranda, and thank you to Rocky and thank you to Miranda Blunt. And then sometimes somebody from rep comes, and I think maybe once we had a public participant.
A hot topic that could also help engage more people in the committee generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea is to make the conversation, to continue the conversation. We're not trying to quote unquote stir the pot or bring up issues that would be controversial or whatnot. It's just making sure that we still understand or hear what's happening there and share best practices, honestly, and working with the administration to make sure that we're on the same page. It's just one more avenue to try and bring those voices together. Like I said, and you just mentioned it too, we have the opportunity to get more people involved. How we break that nut is what I'm really, I guess, passionate about or whatever. Just let's try and find a way. How do we get more people involved? Once we have a critical mass of people involved, those conversations, at least in my mind, can also move forward even in a better way or more. What's the word I'm looking for? In a better way, yeah. Just continuing to, right. It's just a critical mass. As far as I think it is.
I guess I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, I guess, Matthew.
Involvement, having more people. We don't have enough people participating.
In what though?
In anything. Who puts together the fiesta?
You're talking about on a leadership level.
On the participation basis, and that's another thing that CPS is making it hard for us to do. They come to the event, but the people who organize it.
Okay, that's what I mean by leadership. I'm trying to make the
Okay,
distinction.
so volunteer participation, not attendance.
Okay, I think because when it came to this horrible tragedy that our school communities faced and all those WhatsApp groups and you can't say people aren't involved.
For sure, absolutely, but now, but that's a corollary to that.
That's wild what happened there. I think it's just a matter of engaging people and topics they're interested in.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Deliberate, just continuing and hopefully making it sticky is that part. Like really making it sticky is what I'm hoping we can continue doing. And again, we're in a good position because we can have these types of conversations. Like I said, perspective-wise, it's not necessarily something that happens as effectively in other places. And not to kind of compare, but what I'm trying to say is, we have a good baseline, a solid baseline. I think we have an opportunity to continue developing that.
I would just like want to make another point about the equity committee and this conversation around fundraising. I feel like the kind of the power of the committee and the LSC and like all of our roles is to be able to like pull people together and get people in the room to get the work done, right? So just kind of leaning into that and using that as a resource to like get all the people in the room to
What's
have
that, using
conversation.
that, meaning the committee?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
using that.
this, your role as like an elected, LSC member, the structure that we put in place in this particular way, right? Putting the equity committee as a committee of the LSC,
Codify.
to codify the sort of work and to make that, have that body really have influence over the school and the LSC. To use these tools that we have to pull people into the room for these conversations. I think people will show up for that conversation.
Yeah. And like just add one last comment and maybe suggestion. There are definitely a lot of issues happening, problems to be solved, right? And I'm not on a committee, but I don't know what was the nature of setting up the committees. But maybe coming back to us with a proposal and say, here's what we see, here's a recommendation, and some people can jump in and say, okay, I'm happy to attend the next meeting, but I want to have a more structured approach to get to an action item right away.
I'm sorry, I'm not following what you're suggesting.
No, are you guys coming to us with, I don't know how the committees are set up. Are you guys supposed to go analyze what's happening and come back to us with a
Yeah,
recommendation?
and make recommendations, because
Okay.
were you here last year when I created that graphic? I don't think you were here.
No.
I'll send it to you,
Okay.
but,
I know one very clear next step would be, and I can't do this. Somebody from the LSC should attend FOP, should be cross-pollinating, for
yeah,
lack of a better word.
because like I go to rep from the
Yes,
equity committee, but
exactly.
that's for
I
cross-pollination.
usually try my very best to attend all the FLT meetings.
It's awesome.
Okay.
So you're the Alexa.
What's that?
You're the rep.
Yeah. So this is it.
That's a good
Yeah.
one. Oh.
I mean,
wow.
I'm not a graphic designer, but I can send that to you. It was more about, so I'll try not to belabor this point, because I know we've been talking. I don't notice the timekeeper's keeping time tonight.
That's because my daughter and my phone. I'll start now.
Like last school year before you were on the council, there were some deep concerns about equity committee and what it was up to. And I think, there were Matthew, jump in here because you were chairing the equity committee at the time, but there were some just concerns that like it was the accountability mechanism. And so in talking to some people from REP and just talking, trying to crowdsource some suggestions about that, it was suggested, or I was reminded that the LSC is the elected body and that's where accountability should sit. And so that graphic sort of represents the feedback mechanism that is the equity committee, to come to the council and say, here's a problem that surfaced, or here's an inequity that surfaced through, people coming to the meeting or that we're aware of or whatever. And here are the recommendations we're making to the council to hold the school accountable on this particular item. Yeah. And I would say this year, things were quiet, like we weren't, for a long time, we didn't have meetings because we had no agenda items. So thinking about ways, to your point, Matthew, to not just on the part of the equity committee, but, I know REP has struggled with this from time to time too, but I think finding out like, here's what the mission of this thing is, this organization or this parent group, how does that jive with you as a parent or you as a caregiver? Does that sound like something that meets your needs or not? And if not, how could we adjust it so it could be? Trying to get to the heart of why people aren't engaged. And I feel that, Matthew, because, I think this year I felt less connected at Peirce than I did previous years. So I don't know if it's a Peirce, something going on in the water or something just, I have a friend beyond Peirce who says we are not okay as a society. And it makes me wonder, is that lack of engagement because we've just lived through a pandemic and, a lot of collective trauma that we haven't processed. I don't know. we can have more conversations about that over years.
Absolutely.
We'll go quickly. Principal evaluation, since she's not here, we can evaluate her.
Remember that?
That is, so this is one thing that we didn't do, and this is, I'll take some of that responsibility, but we're putting together a plan to get that done right when the school starts next time. We need to do 2 of them in a year, in a school year. And I'm also trying to get a hold of Mr. Ricania, our new OLCR rep, to try and figure out, what the next steps are. There's a new evaluation that came out, but it's my understanding that we can just use what we've been using before because there's no changes, or use a template. There's a new template that's being rolled out. It's out there, but they're doing, and I know I may have shared that with a group. They're doing focus groups to go over the new process of evaluating
I thought that was
principals.
already done. Are they still
So
doing
there's a couple more sessions. There's one at the end of the month to go over the new evaluation process.
They must be reading their emails too slow or too quickly.
Yeah, I think it's the 30th is the next section, is like session number 5.
But Matthew, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to go back to something you just said, did I understand you to say the evaluation for this year will happen next year?
We did one last time as part of the contract renewal.
Right, that was a year ago.
So that was in September or July. I don't remember what the year was, what the month was.
It was January when we had that special meeting of 2023 to evaluate Lori.
For the new contract.
Yeah.
Okay. So bottom line is we don't have one. So we will need to get the earliest we can do it because school needs to be in session. We need to have it. I don't know. So it's the 16th. We have between now. If we were to do one between now for this year, it would have to be before June 9th. So that's why I'm asking our rep to see if there's a way, like what does that mean? What are the consequences or what are the repercussions of not having the evaluation completed this year? Just so we have something to fall back on if necessary. And that one is this is not because we didn't have time, it's because I didn't put the wheels in motion to get that completed.
Okay, so that's, how are you going to communicate what he says?
As soon as I get it back, I'll share it with everyone just to kind of hear what the options are. So we can have a separate, because it would have to be, if we want to do the survey, there's a survey that needs to go to both the teachers and the community / parents and the students, and then we get together, rate, and get it done. The rating doesn't take much time. It's the logistics before that.
So can we get the survey out to everybody this month or something?
So that's what I'm hoping we can do in the next week or so, if possible.
I'm sorry, so I'm processing the fact that there's a new evaluation system, but I think you said that Jose, Mr. Requena said you can use the old one?
That's what I heard in during one of those training sessions that we had about the new.
Because if we can, my mind went to isn't it just easy to replicate the old surveys?
That's right.
But if we can't, then there's a hurdle
Correct.
with understanding how the new ones.
Then you need to approve it. There's an approval process, and then we can use it.
Okay.
And I don't know. I don't think it affects the teacher version of it, but I know for sure that it definitely impacts ours.
Yeah.
So.
Ours meaning the LSCs.
The parents / community. So. So next on here is old business. I just put that there. I didn't have any subsection about it. I just wanted to have it there as a placeholder. New business. 30 minutes, ooh, that's long. School year 24-25, July organizational meeting. So Lori sent out an email and a doodle to the new members. I will point out that we are short one parent rep, so that would probably be the first order of business once we get to convene. Next item, updates from the LSC special budget meeting. I had a couple of items. One of them was the special ed comment that I think that was addressed. Kathleen, I don't know, or I don't know if there were other items.
I had not given any items for the agenda. Yeah, I feel like that special ed update was what I was waiting for, and Lori gave us that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone have any other.
Okay. Yeah, so somebody asked me like, what's our budget shortfall? And I said, whose? CPS or Peirce's? And the answer is depends, right? So I even went back and looked at the replay from our previous meeting. We talked about between salaries and benefits and other amounts of money that we were going to be getting back.
Do they mean short? What's the shortfall compared to here's what we need
the prior year
versus? Well, those are not apples and
exactly
apples.
exactly
That's
exactly.
the problem.
It depends
That's
on
why I think we're all trying to wrap our
factors.
heads around how it, because I went back and looked before that special budget meeting, and I was trying to compare numbers. I'm like, well, they're not comparable because student-based budgeting is no longer, and so that pot of money that represented the number of students, you can't. Anyway, I'm sure you explained that to who was asking.
You can't.
I think it's maybe when parents ask that question, it's better to refer them to, well, here's what we're not going to have, these positions and, yeah.
Exactly. All right. Again, another placeholder, if there were any new business items or old business items.
I just want to make a suggestion for our meetings, for those who are going into next term for public participation. My suggestion is that we keep that to the public speaking, and if folks want to respond, that we respond in old business or new business, because I feel like we're cutting into the public's opportunity to share.
Okay.
I don't know what you mean. Do you mean?
Can
you elaborate?
So the public participation, part of the agenda, in my opinion, is reserved for the public to have their voice.
Yeah.
Our voices are throughout, right? So I think that should be it's not a Q&A, right? It's just the public voicing their opinion, and if there's a response or an update, I think that goes elsewhere in the agenda.
Okay. So responses to public comments.
Our public participation ends up being a Q&A, which in my opinion is not really the intention of it.
Got it. So say that someone participates during public participation, and then we start to have a conversation about the topic they brought up.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so today, for instance, I think,
Yeah.
examples are these kindergarten play.
Yeah.
I asked Kristen to share, and then it became a huge topic of discussion. And it could have just been a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we
put it on the
moved
agenda
that
if we want to talk
response
about it.
somewhere
Makes
else.
sense.
Yeah.
Where would that go on the agenda, out of curiosity? You're
New
saying
business?
in new business?
If we want to talk about it this meeting, it can, or it can be in the next meeting. It doesn't have to be a right now solution,
Yeah,
right?
got
as
We
we
probably
say,
should have put play on the agenda for new business this time, based on the last.
based on the comment last week. Yeah.
I got you now. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for bearing with my.
I think what would be helpful is maybe at the end of the agenda to add in, are there any items based on public participation, so that we're not talking about it then maybe, but that need to be added as an item at the next meeting. That could be
Sounds good.
a way to capture the conversation without having the conversation right then.
Yeah. That makes sense.
come in and probably participate. All right. Speaking of public participation,
I'll ask you a question.
Yay.
of course.
It's funny because I was like maybe gonna do Q&A, but I would say, two questions that I have are just, and I'm incoming, right, so I'll have a kindergartner, but how, parents and community members hear from the LSC, like if there's any communication mechanisms, is a question that I have. And then kind of relatedly to the conversation that was just happening, and this is a consideration for the elected school board also in terms of public participation, but also like connecting with your rep, is what opportunities outside of LSC members, parents and community members have to just be in conversation with the LSC, whether it's formal or informal. So there's my question. And you don't need to answer that.
We'll break protocol this time. Peirce LSC at gmail.com.
And some of us have individual emails on the website too.
Is it all electronic? Like, are there like just times to talk with?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, several parents I reached out to. I'm speaking for myself to us
Yeah.
specifically. I just happen to have. So we have 3 kids here, and so dropping off, picking up, or school events. I've had the opportunity to just kind of share, or they've come to me or other folks and said, can we talk, or can I share something with you? When we're out there, I try to refrain from being a stalker, but at least ask people, is there anything, I just happen to sit on the LSC. Do you have questions? There's something about it. Usually, it's never a problem, or I haven't seen it being a problem. People just kind of voicing or sharing and things like that. So I would say that's the first one, and then organically, again, the formal one is Peirce LSC, but anything, we're here.
I love, I'm not supposed to address it.
It's okay, no.
It's public
I
comment.
love the idea of face-to-face conversations. Like, I think at one point we talked about what could it look like to do, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is before my time at Peirce, but were LSC members doing coffees at some point, or like come to coffee
We did
studio?
it once a month.
That was like pre-pandemic or during?
Yes, we had a grand total of 6 people attending
Yeah.
12 sessions. So
It's a perennial problem in all the schools that I've watched LSC meetings at and been a part of. It seems to be, I think there's people who don't know what the LSC does, and then you think about like, maybe it could be a newsletter. Well, people don't have time to read, so do you have any suggestions for that?
No, I was just something I'm thinking about, and I work in like community.
I know.
Yeah.
But also like people are busy, right? And so,
Yeah.
Also the conversation of like meeting people where they're at and like, so anyway, just something, curiosity.
There's also coffee with the principal. That's an in-person event. And then the LSC tables at the Peirce family events.
Oh, yeah.
So there's like the LSC table. And then I'd be for doing the coffee again, and then with the new LSC and the new term. You're actually the second person to bring this up like in a row. So there's,
And honestly, like, I don't know that I was gonna benefit, right? But just like thinking about like channel communication, like what people know about and like what this body can do for parents.
Yep.
And what's happening in decisions that are being made at a level of, how is the budget changing? How does it affect, like, just stuff like that.
I think too that at least I can speak for myself, that I've tried to interact with other parent groups, like, BAC and REP, and just sort of have those ongoing conversations in the hope that you're sort of spreading the engagement around. But I don't know how effective that is. Like, I don't know if that communication just stays between me and somebody on REP, for example, or on BAC, or if it gets sort of circulated, and vice versa.
Yeah, non-critique.
it's really important.
And I recognize that you're doing all the time. I'm not necessarily asking for more.
No, it's totally fine. Totally fine.
I appreciate the questions.
All right. Next item is announcements and comments. I'd like to remind everyone that the Lunar Year Parade is next February. And there's the idea of getting a float for Peirce at these types of events. So I will be reminding the community about that.
For what?
For the Lunar Year
Oh my
Parade.
gosh.
Oh
my gosh.
It's coming up.
Oh my gosh.
So.
Did we say that the organizational meeting would be July 11th at 5:30?
So we did not. I just said that you sent an email and a
Yes.
doodle to everyone.
Did you
So
say July 11th at what time?
At 5:30.
Okay.
That was the most popular response.
1:30 p.m. 5:30.
5:30. So I will email the elected members that will be the day and time, which is ironically a Thursday at 5:30.
Do you know
You know,
what,
I'm
guys?
sorry, I'm completely remembering something we didn't talk about that we should have. Can I go back?
What?
I'll just pin this. We didn't talk about the student fee.
Yeah.
We didn't
Because
do
we're
any
not
of that.
ready to.
Okay, then I'll
Um,
feel so bad.
I think Blake's children may attend next year, which means he cannot be
Community.
here. I need to follow up with him on that.
But he could be, we will have one parent.
Right.
So we
Which is
will have to
easy switch,
advertise
yeah.
it, and then the council has to then decide based on applicants who they would select.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Checking on norms. Thanks again for the conversation. I think we're good. Before we adjourn, I know that our council is now light on the participants right now. People have to go. But
I want to clap for Lindsay.
thank you for. I know. Yeah.
All those text messages, all those emails you sent.
I know.
A lot.
Very helpful. Thank you so much for joining. I know you were
Seriously.
just gonna I call it the alley hoop. Just gonna throw you, So thank you very much for all your time. So
First year teaching?
No.
First year. Just first year.
First
Okay.
year.
Still impressive.
so with that, make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, and again, we will see everyone from the council July 11th.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Happy end of the school year. Yes.
Yeah.
Peace.
Did I add a teacher? Is there enough time? Because my
Do you
child
need
has
anything?
no